Hola estudiantes, today I'm going to be talking about the present perfect tense. This is a review from August in the present perfect subjunctive tense. Please have your note guide out and ready. So we reviewed this tense in August. The present perfect indicative is talking about what has or hasn't happened for a period of time, and it talks about something that happens very recently. So here are some examples. We use the helping verb haber to talk about, it's like the equivalent of our have or has, and I'm going to show you how to conjugate that in just a second. So we use the verb haber, then we use it with the past participle, hado or ido. So this is an example. Yo no he hablado sobre el día de gracias todavía. I haven't talked about the Day of the Dead or the day of Thanksgiving yet. So that is an example of a present perfect tense. Let me talk about some of how we conjugate it. We use the verb haber, and then we also use it by the past participle. So right now I'm just going to talk about the verb haber. So right now what I want you to do is I want you to fill in the chart number 1, and so I would use a, as, a, hemos, and an. So it's like saying I have, you have, he or she has, we have, they have, and then we use the past participle with it. So we use the past participle with it, and we use AR verbs. And in Spanish, if I'm going to take an AR verb and I'm going to put it in I'm going to use a past participle, the AR would go to hado. So I want you to fill out number 2 on your note guide. And for ER and IR verbs, I would use ido. So for ER and IR verbs, I would use ido. So for AR verbs, it would be hado, and for ER and IR verbs, it would be ido. So right now, I want you to fill out part 2 and 3 of your note guide. Comer. Think to yourself, what would comer be as a participle? So we take off the ER, and we would add ido, comido, and for recibir, we would add recibido. So let me show you some examples of the present perfect tense. Here's the first one. She has given birth. Ella ha dado la luz. I'm using the verb haber, and I'm conjugating it. Here she has, and then I use the verb dar, and if I took off the AR, I would add hado. Ella ha dado la luz. I could say we have eaten the avocado. Hemos comido el aguacate. If you see here, I have the verb haber, and it's conjugated. And then right here, I have the verb comer, and it is conjugated. It's an ER verb, so the participle would be comido. Hemos comido el aguacate. Here I have another one, the verb haber. You have drank the lime juice, or the mango juice. Tú has bebido el jugo de mango. So what I want you to do is I want you to do step 4 on your note guide, and I want you to write a sentence using the present perfect tense, and I want you to use a word from chapter 4 where we talked about eventos and celebraciones, or you could use it from the comida. So here are some examples could be, we have eaten the pork chops. Hemos comido las chuletas. Or they have made the candy. Hemos hecho los bombones. Bien. So let me talk a little bit now about some of the irregulars. And these irregulars are irregular in the present perfect and also in the present perfect subjunctive that I'm getting ready to talk about. So these are verbs that don't follow the hado, ido rule. They're irregular. So abrir would be abierto, cubrir, cubierto, covered, decir, dicho, said, escribir, escrito, written, hacer, hecho, made, morir, muerto, died, poner, puesto, put, romper, roto, broke, ver, visto, seen, volver, vuelto, returned. These are all irregular ones. These are a few others that are, hold on, before I start talking about the others that are irregular, let me talk about some examples of using these irregular past participles. So I could say something like, she has eaten, or I'm sorry, she has made the pork chops. Ella ha hecho las chuletas. Or we have opened the mango juice. Hemos abierto el jugo de mango. Here are a few others that are also irregular. They're irregular because we add an accent. If the stem of an ER or IR verb ends in a vowel other than U, we place an accent on the hado or the ido. So I could say something like, she has read the book, ella ha leído el libro, or we have made the shrimp for the party. Nosotros hemos traído los camarones a la quince. So if you noticed, we have an accent on the I, leído, read, and traído, brought. So what I want you to do right now, before we go on, is stop the video, and I want you to write a sentence, number 5 on the note guide. I want you to form an irregular present perfect participle. And I want you to use one of those irregulars. So you could say something like, we have opened the door, hemos abierto la puerta, or we have made the food, hemos hecho la comida. Also, when we use an object pronoun, like me, te, le, nos, or les, or lo, la, los, and las with the present perfect indicative, it goes before the verb haber. So here are some examples. So for example, I would say Florencia has told us the good news. Florencia nos has cantado las buenas noticias. If you see the object pronoun is before the participle and the haber, or I could say they have invited us to the wedding. Me han invitado a la boda. The object pronoun goes before. It doesn't attach like the present perfect tense. Okay, so like I said, I would like you to try to write a sentence using a present perfect with an irregular past participle, number 5, if you haven't done so already. And so and then I also had some examples there, and I already talked about those. So let's talk now about the present perfect subjunctive. And so we just talked about the present perfect. That was a quick review from August. So now let's talk about the present perfect subjunctive. But before we do that, let's talk about some of the triggers for the present perfect subjunctive. So let's review some of those. And so I'm going to talk about all the steps of weird, or all of those trigger words. So if I wanted to express a wish, I would use words like esperar, desear, and ojalá que. These verbs are in the present tense, and they would ultimately trigger the present perfect subjunctive in the second part of the sentence. So I could say something like, I hope that you have made the food, or I wish that you have done the homework. So we're still using the subjunctive, it's just a different form of the subjunctive. Remember, for emotions, I could use words like estar feliz, to be happy, estar triste, to be sad, estar sorprendido, to be surprised, estar alegre, another way to say to be happy, estar enojado, to be angry. And a personal remark, the I in weird is bueno que, is curioso que, is horrible que, is lógico que, is normal que, is natural que. Those would all trigger the subjunctive in the second part of the sentence. Remember, for the subjunctive to happen, we would have one of these triggers, and we also have to have a change of subject. A request, sugerir, to suggest, querer, to want, or pensar, to think that, and the D, to doubt, dudar. So here are some examples of just present subjunctive sentences. So let's just review that quickly, and then I'll teach you how to form the present perfect subjunctive. So I could say something like, espero que comas el bizcocho. I hope that you eat the chocolate cake. So here is our trigger in the present tense. There's a change of subject, so I would use the subjunctive. Remember how we form the subjunctive? You put the verb in the yo form, present tense. You take the o off and you add the opposite ending. Or I could say something like, I doubt that you know your grandparents well. Dudo que conozcas tus abuelos bien. These are just examples of regular present subjunctive sentences. So before we go on, I would like you to do number 6 on the note guide. Write a sentence using a subjunctive trigger in the subjunctive tense. So now let's talk a little bit about how we would form the present perfect subjunctive. And so just like we formed the present perfect, we also use the verb haber, and we also use the hado ido. But before that, there has to be a trigger expressing one of the parts of weird, like an emotion, judgment, doubt, or hope that something has happened. We would use, like I said, we would use the verb haber, but it would, instead of using as, a, hemos, and an, we would use the subjunctive of haber, which you've already learned, and then you would use a participle. Remember, in AR verbs, it ends with ado, and for ER and IR verbs, it ends with ido, unless it's one of those irregulars that I mentioned earlier that's on your note guide and also on the video. So, this is how you would form the verb haber. Right now, I would like you to fill in the verb chart that goes with the verb haber in the present subjunctive as I speak. So I would use the verb haya for the yo form, hayas for the to form, haya for the usted el ella form, hayamos for the nosotros form, and hayan for the ustedes form. Then we would also pair it with either AR verbs, hado, or for ER or IR verbs, we would use ido. So let me talk about some of the examples. So I could say, I'm happy that I met your stepsister. Estoy feliz que hayas conocido tu hermanastra. So here I have a trigger. Then I also have the subjunctive verb, haber. I have the participle, conocido. So, and there's also a change of subject. Estoy feliz que hayas conocido tu hermanastra. Or here's another one. It's important that you have not eaten the lamb. Es importante que no hayas comido el cordero. So what I want you to do now is I want you to stop the video, and I would like you to do part 7 of the note guide. Write a sentence using 2 of the triggers that I talked about. Maybe you could use one from W and one from E of weird. And then also you would use the present perfect subjunctive in the second part of the sentence. Next time that we come to class, let's